This is a video about Mutant Crawl Classics and my experience of the game so far. And as you know, all of my videos are very carefully scripted in that I'm just making this up as I'm going along. So, back in December 2019, when the world was still fairly normal, our regular monthly DCC group played a game of Mutant Crawl Classics. We played a one-shot of Home for the Holodeath, which was the seasonal festive adventure that year, and I was totally fascinated with the idea of it. I don't know why, I just became hooked with the idea of these futuristic mutants and manimals and plantients and pure strain humans going on adventures in this future world, and finding things which are sort of familiar but not quite, and trying to grab all these pieces of ancient technology for the benefit of our tribe, our little settlement in this future world. And I was totally hooked by it, and I got the book and I started collecting adventures in the hope that one day I might be able to run it for people. Now, this channel is, a lot of it is about solo gaming, but I have to say I don't think that Mutant Crawl Classics is good for solo gaming. It is so deliciously crazy with the crits and fumbles and the fun abilities. It is so a group game. It is not really a solo game. I don't think it works very well for that. I don't think my solo video of Mutant Crawl Classics was a particular classic of mine, but it was what it was. And so I'm going to talk a little bit in this video about my experience of MCC. And I did collect a lot of adventures for it, and it was very frustrating. I thought, how on earth am I going to use these things and get a group going when my group that I was a part of didn't seem to be able to get into that, not with me running it anyway. So after my experience of running Basic Fantasy over the summer and running this in the Basic Fantasy campaign, Dead in the Water by Tim Snyder, a Mutant Crawl Classics adventure, but I medievalized it, and because I'd started reading it and I thought, this is great. Really enjoyable, really, not a huge adventure, but a really enjoyable one. And I thought, well, a week ago, I went on the Goodman Games Discord channel and said, does anybody want to play Mutant Crawl Classics? And I got some responses, and I got a really good group together. And I thought, well, I'll run Dead in the Water as it was meant to be run. And I did. And I killed many characters. It was great. And the thing is with MCC, this has a really nice home base. It's a fishing village, and your characters could be residents of that fishing village. And there is the head of the village, who could be your mentor. He can send you on quests maybe. And there's a character who is a plantient who is very useful for getting you about to other places. And that's great. And there are aspects of this game this adventure, which are familiar to us. You know, I was describing this tower, and one of the players said, oh, it's an oil rig. And that is part of the really fun thing for me with this game. And it's kind of discouraged in the game itself. When you describe something which is familiar to us, but will not be familiar to the characters, you describe something familiar that in a way that somebody would describe it if they'd never seen it before and then didn't know what it was. So I've gone out of focus. And this game sort of discourages that. It talks about talking about futuristic technology, but you are in the far future. So this futuristic technology is ancient to you, but it's far future to us. And so you're describing things which don't actually exist right now, and they're not really, really familiar to us. And so you're not going to suddenly go, oh, I know what that is, but my character doesn't. And that's just a little bit of a fun thing that is trying to be pushed out of the game with the main rules. And I think that's a shame, so I'm going to completely ignore that. Now, for pure strain humans, if you have any of those, when you get to level 1, you are allowed to choose a class. And I've heard some people say that the healer is a bit dull, but in the game I'm running, one of the characters has chosen to be a healer, and I'm thinking, wow, that's actually quite cool, because seeing all of the party come together, and they're starting to choose their human abilities, human classes, and the manimals and mutants and plantients are getting their mutations. And I'm finding it really interesting how the party's coming together for our first level adventure, which will be next weekend. And the hero is kind of interesting, because somebody asked on the Mutant Crawl Classics Facebook group about personality bonuses for healers, and I was kind of thinking they were perhaps thinking about the cleric in Dungeon Crawl Classics, which gets a personality bonus when doing laying on hands, because laying on hands is a sort of spell, so that's a little bit different and would take on your personality bonus. But this natural healing is sort of a natural ability, it's not really a spell, so you just get what is there. You get 1d3 healing twice a day for first level, and it goes up as you increase. It's not really a spell, it's just their natural healing abilities of using herbs and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, it's a nice little ability there. And although the healer may not seem like an utter cool bottom kicking class, it's going to fit in nicely to a party, because it's going to be really useful, but they're going to have other useful abilities as well, like AI recognition isn't bad, Darwinian look, their look abilities are pretty good, so not a bad class at all. You've got your shaman, which is dealing with another difficult concept, which is the patron AI. And I think I would like to bring in patron AIs sort of slowly as a concept, because I personally find it quite challenging to get to grips with. But if somebody's walking past a cathode ray screen that suddenly flickers to life, and then a face appears and says, "You there! You! Yes, you! I see you've got potential," and then sort of offers to take you on as their follower if you'll devote yourself to them, and they will give you some cool wetware programs or spells. And that's another thing in the game. It doesn't come with many patron AI spells. It encourages you to grab spells from DCC, but there is another book which has a really awkward name, which contains a lot of useful information and a lot of new wetware programs for MCC. And I've just checked, it's called Incaridian of the Computarx. It's like one of those heavy metal bands that have a logo that's completely impossible to read. But I wish they'd have come up with an easier name to remember. But there you go. So that will have a lot of wetware programs, spells, for your shaman to have some fun with, because it gives it that Mutant Crawl Classics far future flavour, rather than just trying to translate the sort of kind of medieval world of Dungeon Crawl Classics. Now, I am a bit of a fan of Tim Snyder. I've also got his 1 Year in the Savage Afterworld book, with a lot of mini encounters designed for a post-apocalyptic thing, aimed at Mutant Future initially. But I have tried to get Mutant Future going as a solo game, but I'm finding some of the rules really just totally go against the solo grain and don't work well at all. Like pain insensitivity, that means that your character does not keep track of their own hit points. The mutant lord does, the GM, and that is entirely unhelpful in a solo game. So I've not got on well with this as a solo game so far. But as it's based on BX, I have a fondness for it because I like BX, but I'm finding it a struggle, and I love this cover. It's fantastic. Now, as I mentioned, the first game in our campaign was a third-party adventure, and the second one for next weekend will be as well. But I do have some of the Goodman Games official ones, and but I want to stick with the sort of vibe of this because I do like the idea of some of the technology being familiar to us, like from the 20th or 21st century, you know, so that the players will think, I know what that is. And so I want to keep that, and I don't want to go too much into this very far future thing because I'm not familiar with it. You know, the Appendix N stuff, I'm not ever so familiar with the far future, you know, swords and blasters things from the fiction and stuff, science fantasy. I'm not really familiar with that. I'm very familiar with, you know, your classic fantasy stuff, and I'm quite fascinated with the sort of Fallout, Zona kind of post-apocalyptic thing. And I think just pushing that a little bit further into the future would be my sweet spot. You know, just quite familiar, but just that little bit far into the future. Whereas the very far into the future thing that's almost unrelatable toable, that's not a word, would be, it's not something I can grab onto. I find it quite challenging. Some of these adventures that I've had a look through look fantastic, but I do want to stick to that not so far into the future that I have no idea where I am. You know, I'm completely out of my depth. It's not my comfort zone. So just to pull it back a little bit and keep it a little more dead in the water. So I look forward to running the Goats of Travail next weekend, and thank you for watching this little tiny video about my experience so far with MCC.